economists seem divided on the health of the U.S. economy.
I would say this is the most confusing moment in U.S. economic history.
I'm not seeing any kind of recession signs.
There's a recession in our future.
A top concern for Americans: will they lose their job?
We have twice the number of job openings as we have workers searching for work. We've never seen that.
So, it's hard to see how we could be in a recession with that level of job growth and income growth.
So, at a very fundamental, basic level, technically, the requirements for a recession are in full swing. The requirements for us to be defined as being in a recession, we've already hit it. And not only that, we also have an egregious amount of inflation, as you guys already know, and that I've been hitting on for an extended period of time. The last report of inflation was at 8.3%, which is still absolutely insane. And at one point, it got up to 9.1%, which, whether or not you are actually having worse inflation than what's being reported from the federal government, it depends on your lifestyle, and it depends on what you're required in order to make sure that you can survive and that you can eat and you can do things. I will say that us and me traveling as much as I travel, what we wind up spending on food is crazy. I mean, I would say per month, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. But I also do a lot of entertaining, right? I have a lot of people over. I buy food for the whole crew. When we was at the Patreon meetup in Detroit, I actually pay for everybody to eat. So my food budget is insane. My food budget is absolutely insane. But it's weird because we have so much stability as far as jobs because of the lack of jobs, which may be explaining one of the reasons why they're letting everybody just hop over the border fence and they ain't arresting them. Whole nother subject. But more importantly, we are definitively in a recession without a doubt. But let's continue. Aaron said, I'm trying to fit time to get more work and more jobs. I'm looking to be so expensive. I just talked to a friend who joined a startup. Employee number 10, he said, no job can afford him now. I need that level. There are jobs that can afford you, big dog. It's just, what are they willing to pay for it? It depends on the type of value that you add into their company.
At the same time, big companies are already announcing layoffs, including Best Buy, Ford Motor, HBO Max, Peloton, Shopify, Walmart, and Wayfair.
Now, one thing that you guys have to understand is that the reason for these, shout out to Aaron too, the reason for layoffs are different from company to company. This is not a traditional market in which people are laying off because they're trying to cut costs only. It's not the case. Take, for example, Ford Motor Company, right? Ford is not trying to lay people off just because they have a lack of capital, right? Because Ford are actually having really great quarters. They have really great growth, especially when it comes to their EVs. They're doing incredibly well. They still have the best-selling vehicle in America in the F-150. And then more importantly, they've recently launched the F-150 Lightning, and they have a bunch of other stuff coming in the works that's going to ensure their growth and dominance in an industry that is largely unfounded yet, meaning that the majority of cars that are being sold are still internal combustion engine vehicles. However, the difference between why Peloton may be laying off is completely different than why Ford may be laying off, which is where the context comes in and why people can't just look at a video, or why some of these people that call themselves gurus can't have this conversation with you in order to add the context as to why these companies are doing what they're doing. Let's continue, and I'm going to break it down for you.
Now, a survey shows 50% of firms expect to reduce their labor force in the next 6 to 12 months.
Okay.
The important thing to take into consideration, and why I compared Peloton to Ford Motor Company, right, is because Peloton is laying off because the demand for their bikes, which had already been fulfilled during the pandemic, and one of the reasons why their stock took off, and one of the reasons why I told you to sell their stock, is because they have no true business plan. First of all, they've never been profitable for 1 year straight, which is a red flag for a company that's largely basing their dependency and their valuation on growth Because if it's not a growth stock and nobody is actually embracing your business model, then you are a dying company. Their business model was broken. They don't make any money on their bikes. And then the product that they actually put out, you can use doing something else, and you don't even have to buy a Peloton bike in order to do so. You can go and get a regular stationary bike, or you can go to the gym, or you can ride your bike down the street, or you can just get a regular pedal bike and then use your Apple Watch to do the exact same thing that you're getting from the subscription model that's absolutely over expensive and that they paying all of these content creators to run these classes for. People want to get outside. People want to have experiences. It's a bad business model. I think it's a dying company, and I actually know people that work there that are also trying to get the heck up out of there. Ford, on the other hand, has a growing segment within their business, including electrification, and Ford no longer looks at itself as just an auto manufacturer, but as a technology company similar to Tesla, meaning that their growth and their prospects are huge, but they're actually moving away from a legacy business in internal combustion engines, which is still profitable. Think about it, y'all. Think about it for a minute. They're growing in one area that is going to be way more profitable than the other area. And I'm not going to break down why it's why it's going to be so much more profitable to be in the EV business than it is to be in an internal combustion engine. But to just give you a general idea of what that looks like: less moving parts, less maintenance, no oil, no spark plugs, having a flat panel. I went to the charity preview and I was able to look through a lot of these cars, and the requirements in order for these cars to be functional and operational is much different than it is in order to get these cars rocking out with internal combustion engines, which means that they're going to need less workers, more technology. And so them laying off the segment of workers that are working on internal combustion engines, if they can't find a position for them inside of the technology sector, is the main reason why they're laying off, which is more of a justification to invest in a company. Although every single company inside of the tech sector and stocks across the board are down, is more of a reason for you to look for these companies or look for the gems inside of these companies. And why I tell y'all inside of the Patreon, make sure y'all tap into the Patreon. Link is in the description as well as pinned to the top of the chat. I say it every single day. I have videos inside of there that break down what I look to invest in a company. What am I looking for in order to invest in a company? What are the 8 things that I'm looking for in order to invest in a company? Don't say it in the chat. But how you see a company, not just a balance sheet. Somebody told me, they said they worked at like an AutoZone or O'Reilly's or some crap like that, something where you go and fix up cars. They said, man, their balance sheet is great. They management it also. I said, but they got a red flag, fam. They said, what's their red flag? I said, would you invest in a company? Do I teach you to invest in a company unless you're going to do it for the next 10 years or 15 years? They said, no, you actually advise against that. I said, so with people moving away from internal combustion engines and having less maintenance issues with regard to their car, why would you invest in a company who is largely dependent on internal combustion engines? And they've already seen a decrease in their business because most auto manufacturers are requiring people to go into the dealership even to be able to service their cars and not mess up their warranty in the first place. And it was like, man, I didn't think about that. I'm gonna have to do some more research. You need to truly understand the business model, the management, the profit and loss, how much debt they have, and so many different other factors in order to make an informed decision as to whether or not you're going to invest in a company. Don't just throw your money away. Make informed decisions, and everything, including this report that I'm going to continue to go through, is going to factor into whether or not you know what you're talking about when it comes to making strategic decisions and informed decisions on investments. Ain't nobody messing with me in these YouTube streets. Shout out to my girl Bella, says, are you going to do an interview with Bandman Kevo? If that's what y'all want to see. If that's what y'all want to see. Is that what y'all want to see? Y'all want me to tap in with Bandman? I like Bandman Kevo. I think that he's interesting. I really do. It's a lot of gems that Bandman give out that I actually rock with. So shout out to Bandman Kevo. If y'all want me to get an interview with Bandman Kevo, we can kick it. We can kick it. But again, I'm trying to break down to y'all exactly how it is that I see things from an investment perspective, because that's going to be the determining factor for whether or not you actually should make a long-term decision or short-term play. And I don't believe in short-term plays.
Be more layoffs, so you need to be, wary of that.
Is the US economy on the brink of a major recession, or are we already in one? And are massive layoffs on the horizon? The discrepancy over whether there's a recession depends on if you focus on gross domestic product data or what's happening in the labor market.
A recession is about what we produce as a country, how much income we have as a country, how many jobs are out there. Right? This is big picture, and a recession means we're going backwards.
Well, recession is defined as a broad-based, persistent decline in economic activity.
So let's break it down. A recession is basically a slowdown in the economy. Less money being moved around, which means that less money to go around, because in order to have a thriving economy, you got to have a small business growth mindset and mentality being implemented across the board. Small businesses is the economic engine that drives growth within America. It's not just big box company, it's actually small companies, right? But then at the same time, what we've seen is a change in guard and the ways in which people make money, right? So I'm not sure that when they have these conversations that they are truly taking into consideration every single factor when determining what the economic slowdown is really about. Shout out to Aaron, says Patreon interview with Patrick Bet David. What's Patrick David? I'm gonna have to do some research on some of these people.
And
that
the arbiter of recessions is the Business Cycle Dating Committee, which is a group of academic economists that are at the National Bureau of Economic Research. And they look at a plethora of economic data. GDP is one of the indicators, and that by itself would be signaling, yes, a recession has occurred in the first half of this year. Look, we did not suffer a recession in the first half of this year. Yeah, GDP declined 2 quarters in a row, but that's a rule of thumb. That's just a rule of thumb.
The GDP measure is kind of like a scan in medicine. You know, it can tell you you've got a lump,
I know who Patrick David
not
is.
what.
Patrick David is huge. Patrick David, I think he's a part of Valuetainment, something like that. He has a massive channel.
That lump is. And you actually need to look at far more detailed information to know whether it's benign or whether it's, actually something serious.
The US is only in a recession.
I literally just said that. You can't just take the totality of something without adding the context and understanding why this is happening in order to make an informed decision. A recession is largely going to be based off of several different factors that we can measure. But what about their measures? If you're looking at a basketball player, for example, right? And it's funny because now that I see a lot of these shows is much different than it was in yesteryear. If you're looking at a basketball player, let's cook up. If you're looking at a basketball player, right? And you're trying to figure out whether or not this guy is a good fantasy player or he's the leader of a team or he's a superstar, and we have these debates often at times. A lot of people will lean on the statistics and they'll say, somebody like Tim Duncan, for all of my basketball fans and my guys out there, they'll say, well, Tim Duncan only averaged 18 to 19 points throughout his career. Now, any true basketball fan know that you can't just look at the amount of points that Tim Duncan had in order to substantiate the fact that he is the greatest power forward of all time. It's not just how many points you have. It's the intangibles. The big fundamental, you just got to have a basketball eye. All of the other statistics matter, but you got to have a basketball eye to be able to determine whether or not Tim Duncan is the greatest power forward of all time. And he is. 5-time NBA champion, all with one team. Beat the Miami Heat. See, they don't add that in the stats. They don't say that at the apex of LeBron's greatness that he was the one that beat them and took them. They don't say that. After the Miami Heat was looking to have a three-peat that he broke up a team. You can't read that in a stat sheet. But you got to be able to understand the companies that you are looking to invest in. There are certain things that you can't read inside of that stat sheet. You can't read inside of that AutoZone stock price and profitability that they're having with great management. You can't read and understand that Everything is going from internal combustion engine into over electrification, even so far as being incentivized for the government to do so. Have you ever read the infrastructure plan? Have you ever looked at this Build Back Better plan of what they got built into it? Everything is to move away from internal combustion engines and the dependency on foreign oil in order for us to be able to continue to survive as a company. It does not show in the stat sheets. It doesn't. It don't show there. And so it's important for you to understand not only how money works, but to understand how the economy is going and thriving. What is the policies doing? And then more importantly, what the company itself and who's running these companies, what is the long-term strategy in order for them to continue to be successful? Because Kmart was the big dog at one point, and so was Blockbuster, and so was Sears, and so was every other one of these companies. But you have to understand it from a business perspective in order to make a business decision. Let's continue.
If it is officially declared by the National Bureau of Economic Research, and they've not done that yet.
There has been a lot of talk recently. We're in a recession. We have 2 quarters of declining GDP. That often happens with a recession. There's a reason people talk about that. But we have job growth that is incredibly strong. We have an unemployment rate that is a 50-year low. In some ways,
there's never been listen, we're in a recession, but the unemployment remains under 3.6%, which is a 50-year low. Make that make sense for me.
I'm like, I'll take it.
Very, very strong still in the labor market. We're still printing new payroll job numbers at a high level.
The single most important thing is, well, do I have a job?
Mm-hmm.
Do my kids have a job? Does my wife have a job? You know, those are the kinds of things that people, I think, look at.
Which is why it's so easy to trick y'all into thinking that y'all actually doing something, and y'all keep having these conversations based off having high value men that make 6 figures, but you don't even understand that inflation is killing you, and it's now taking you to have a 2-parent household, both adults working and bringing in income in order for you to even be able to survive and put money into your retirement, while trying to prevent your daughter and your son from taking on student loan debt because you don't have enough money to be able to pay for them to go to school and to college.
Officials closely monitor job openings to check on the health of hiring. In July, there were over 11 million job openings. That shows there's a shortage of workers for available positions.
If it does turn out that we are in a world of a persistent labor shortage over time, that'll be a challenging world for companies.
So it's a very interesting time in the economy when you have restaurants and hotels and airlines still starved for talent and trying to hire, as quickly as possible.
Now, why is that relevant? Let's break this down. Why are they saying airlines, hotels? Why are they using that as an example in order to illustrate their point? Well, let me tell you why. One of the best litmus tests, or the best ways to evaluate whether or not an economy is in a tailspin or a free fall, or if it's thriving, is to look at the travel industry. Because the travel industry is the first thing that people let go when they're trying to cut back on spending or things get tight for them. The first thing you do is you cut out going out of town. No more traveling, no more none of that, because you can't get out of your house note. You can't easily get out of your car note. You can't easily, pare down your lifestyle just from the things that you already have as fixed expenses, right? You may be able to cut out the insurance that you're paying, but you certainly going to be driving real careful, hoping that you don't get into an accident, right? But the other side of that equation and the other side of the coin is, what then happens to the things that you do have that additional income to substantiate or do things differently with? Well, you start to cut back. And that's why airlines are so volatile. That's why the hotel industry is so volatile. When the pandemic hit, they were the ones that were hit the hardest, which was one of the incentives behind the PPP loans in the first place.
In July 2022, the unemployment rate was at 3.5%, a low that matched pre-pandemic levels.
We've been rescuing the job market from the pandemic downturn and stabilizing the economy after its unprecedented disruption.
A little bit different.
We brought the United States back to full employment in record time.
Then unemployment ticked up 0.2 percentage point in August. That means thousands of people are entering the workforce.
We did see.
And guess who the ones that's entering the workforce at the highest pace? people that are 70 and above. People that are 70 and above are actually the ones that are entering into the workforce at the highest rate. That should tell you something. See, everything that I'm giving you and everything that I'm breaking down and adding context behind is context clues for y'all to be able to make more informed decisions. It is your context clues for you to be able to make more informed decisions as to whether or not you are doing the right thing and you're making the right investments that's long-term going to benefit you. Everything that I'm telling you makes sense.
Increase in labor force participation. Nonetheless, still a full percentage point below where it was before the crisis. And I think it's important as a society that we have measures in place to support a strong labor market and high labor force participation. And that goes beyond, what we can accomplish with monetary policy.
And then you have other parts of the economy, like tech and e-commerce and real estate, that experienced explosive growth during the pandemic, and that are perhaps kind of tilting back to normal now, that perhaps expanded too quickly, that grew too fast, and that now need to tighten.
Because I know no industry that is upended and suffering both from the builders, the developers, the real estate agents, especially because there are nothing for them to sell because ain't nobody buying nothing. And the rates in which people don't want to pay is one of the things that's keeping them out of buying a house. And so they grew fast and they exploded, and everybody that was in real estate and people was tapping into me talking about, Anton, I'm thinking about getting my real estate license so I can get this money. And I was thinking to myself, fam, you ain't gonna do nothing but be slowed down because you don't have a customer base, A, and B, you are out here going to be looking like a dusty because there's nothing for you to be able to sell.
Rein in their belts a little bit. That said, we're seeing all of these headlines about recessions and about layoffs.
The layoff rate has stayed under 1% of the workforce. That's 1.4 million people as of July. That's close to historic lows.
And that's because in restaurants and in hospitals, it's kind of almost impossible to get fired right now. There are such, shortages of talent that companies are kind of prepared to give workers a second chance.
The Federal Reserve is raising interest rates at this point in an effort to slow down the job market, and that's going to mean more layoffs.
Layoffs are already hitting the tech sector, like Klarna, Snap, even Best Buy and Walmart. Now companies like Google are hinting at potential cuts, as more and more CEOs expect a recession. But economists say the top 4 most recession-proof industries are healthcare, government, education, and computer and information tech. At the same time, the labor market is facing off against the Great Resignation.
They're not quitting to walk away from.
So basically what's really happening, and I'm gonna just go ahead and summarize this really quickly for you guys. What's really happening is there are so many different factors that you can't truly define or designate this as a traditional recession. Is it a recession? Absolutely. Is it a traditional recession? Absolutely not. Because A, there was a lot of people that died during the pandemic, and this is the conversation a lot of people don't want to have. There was a lot of people that died during the pandemic. It's just a fact. And then a lot of people got STEMI checks, and then they pivoted away from what it is that they traditionally did. And so those traditional jobs are the things that's suffering the most. Technology is upending everything. The pandemic upended everything. And then the current economy, it seems as though it's slowing, when in reality, there's just less people to do more things, which technology is going to solve for. And the determination of how fast technology solves for it is going to be the determinant factor for whether or not massive layoffs are going to come. In my personal prediction, no time soon, you have nothing to worry as far as massive layoffs upending your particular industry in which you need to get different skills so that you can capitalize and not suffer as a result of your company then laying you off because they don't need your skill set is the thing that I would say that you need to be more worried about than massive layoffs at hand. You will be fine. You will be okay. Make sure you join the Patreon. Link is in the description as well as pinned to the top of the chat. We're going to run the numbers up. We're going to get to this money. We're going to do what we do on a regular basis. And we are always going to be here for you at the Millionaire Morning Show. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. Make sure you subscribe to the Anton Daniels channel and Fight Club, including the Lapeef Network. And we're going to continue to do the work. I know that the live stream wasn't long today. I do have some other obligations that I have to take care of, but I certainly wanted to make sure that I tapped in with you guys because You are my heart. There is nobody and no one more important than you. So I'm always going to make sure that even if I had to do it at 2 p.m. Eastern, which is 1 p.m. Central, now going into 2 p.m. Eastern here, even if I had to pivot on the time, and we are going to be making adjustments as we go, even if I had to pivot on the time, I'm going to make sure that I pour into you on a regular basis. I love you guys. I appreciate you. Nobody loves you more than me. Thank you for tuning into the Millionaire Morning Show. Please hit a like for the YouTube algorithm on your way out the door. We are going to do the same thing tomorrow, not at this particular time, but we are going to be live streaming tomorrow because we don't miss. I love you. I appreciate you. I need you to do me one more thing before we get up out of here. Make sure you tell your family and friends. We don't want to be rich by ourselves. I love you guys. I appreciate you. Thank you for riding with me. I'm going to continue to add value and make sure that I pour into you on a regular basis. I'm going to holler at you tomorrow. Peace.